Coming up, a man makes his granddaughter's winter wonderland dream come true.
It's good to make kids happy.
You're basically spoiling her, you know.
That's what grandparents do.
A New Jersey town celebrates the lifespan of a 600-year-old tree that made their town whole.
Everybody that's ever lived here has recognized that tree is sort of a symbol of home.
And I'll share the outdoor hobby that has me sneaking out of the house late at night.
He goes out at 7 o'clock at night and weeds until dark. I mean, sometimes he's out there past dark.
All that and more on this Earth Day special of On the Road. Hello, I'm Steve Hartman. Thanks for joining us for our CBS News streaming series, where every month or so, we revisit some of our favorite stories from my 25 years on the road. Since 1970, we've recognized April 22nd as Earth Day, an opportunity to celebrate the wonders of our natural world and why it's so important to preserve it. In this special, we're taking a look through the On the Road archives at stories that highlight our captivating planet, or in some cases, the whole solar system. First up, back in 2017, I had one of the best seats in the house for an amazing natural phenomenon, the Great American Eclipse. And I had company. Take a look. Under that wonderful, waning midday sun,
I think it started.
I think so.
a 9-year-old boy is about to have the greatest experience of his little lifetime. A kid so into astronomy, he takes his planet book to swimming lessons, dressed up as the solar system for Halloween, and made his 3rd grade New Year's resolution to get a shrewd idea of how the multiverse could be real.
It's basically a theory about having not one, but an infinite number of universes.
And you'd like to understand it better?
Yeah, which I already have done.
This is George,
Yeah,
my son.
Would you explain it to me someday?
I will. And me.
And that is his little brother Emmett, who would much rather be discussing anything else.
It's just getting tiring for the whole life to be space.
For Emmett and the rest of us Hartmans, it's like living in an astrophysics lecture hall.
Like dark matter's holding them together. Okay, I'm out of here.
We all laugh about it, but it's also been a marvel to witness. See, George is autistic, and one of the many blessings of his autism is this ability, shared by many like him, to find overwhelming joy in the most underwhelming minutia.
By a strange coincidence, the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, but 400 times closer to the Earth. Where's the sun now?
Given all that, we made a road trip this week to central Nebraska, found a nice lady who let us use her farm, and waited with the locals.
Is this everything you ever dreamed?
It was the perfect setting.
Not me.
Perfect, at least,
Are you?
for most of us. And as the moon made its way to stardom, I saw something truly marvelous.
Dad, it's so cool.
So much of parenting is saying no and forcing vegetables. But on rare occasion, the heavens align and you're in the perfect position to feed a passion.
1% left? Oh my God, it's so dark.
I know a lot of people looked up and saw something remarkable this week.
Look up there!
But for mothers and fathers like me, the more beautiful sight was looking over at the reaction of our precious Earthlings.
Oh my. Let's go.
George is now 14, and he's moved on to other pursuits, things like economics and calculus. You know, typical 8th grade passions. Now, there's something about natural beauty, be it an eclipse, a sunset, or even the majesty of a grand old tree that man just can't compete with. And maybe we shouldn't. Take a look at this next story. At the Basking Ridge Presbyterian Church in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, they don't need stained glass to make their windows breathtaking.
It was built in 1717.
Parishioner John Klippel says for the entire 300-year history of this church, one of the most magnificent oak trees known to man has been filling the panes here. The church was intentionally built beside the tree, and the town grew up around the church.
Everybody that's ever lived here has recognized that tree is sort of a symbol of home.
George Washington walked past it. Some of his soldiers are buried under it. The tree predates America, Columbus. Pretty much everything we know came after this 600-year-old oak. But now our matriarch is fading. After decades of leaning on cables and crutches, experts say the oldest white oak tree in North America is on its last limbs. Local residents can't believe it.
It just kind of feels like a part of the town is kind of dying with it.
Yeah, no one thought about the tree dying. You know, it was one of those things that was going to go on forever.
That's what a lot of people thought. It's always going to be here. But apparently it's not.
For the folks of Basking Ridge, it is very much a grieving process.
Loss, or the anticipation of loss, I think it's traumatic. I think people have to go through their own steps of reconciliation with it.
For centuries, the tree has been an ever-present metaphor for preachers at this pulpit. Whether the lesson was perseverance or patience, creation or resurrection, the tree helped teach it all. And soon will come its final lesson. Maybe a sermon about the cycle of life. Or maybe they'll just take a minute to stare out the window one last time at the finest stained glass picture God ever created. Unfortunately, the old oak tree was cut down in 2017. But a new oak tree that was grown from acorns of the original was planted in its place. We'll have to have our future colleagues at CBS News check in on that in another 600 years. In the meantime, when we return, whether the weather is hot or whether the weather is cold, you can bet people will have opinions about it. Why we're never fully satisfied. Up next. Welcome back. Thanks for being with us. On this Earth Day, we've got the perfect example of that old cliche, the grass is always greener. Turns out, when it comes to weather, that couldn't be more true.
This year, July, is a 3-letter word.
H-O-T.
Hot.
And people are not happy.
It's been super hot.
Of course, folks always whine about the weather, but I've noticed this summer the complaints seem especially heated.
Mother Nature is disrespectful today.
And overstated.
I feel like I'm melting.
I felt like I was going to die.
You'd think there was lava in the streets.
I'm so hot. I wish it was winter.
Oh, do you now?
It's way too hot out here.
How easily we forget just how much worse it could be. Which is why I went back in time today to remind us not only of what the weather could be like, but what it will be like all too soon. Welcome back to the dead of winter.
So what do you have to say to the people of the summer?
Appreciate every moment.
You're not missing anything right now. It's miserable out. You don't want to be here.
Remember this? Remember waking up to Mount Honda? Last winter was the worst since 1978, with record cold stretching all the way to the Gulf. Fountains froze in Raleigh. This was Arkansas. Need I show more?
Springtime, please hurry up. God, I can't take this weather.
It's a classic example of the grass is always greener, or more wonderfully dormant, on the other side of the tree. I mean, doesn't that look refreshing? Doesn't that look refreshing? I mean, wouldn't it be great to just be able to walk on over and warm up, cool off?
In theory, yes. But like whenever you want something you can't have, getting it,
or not,
is the last thing you really need. What we really need is to accept that humans are relatively delicate creatures. Our comfort zone is a narrow sliver between 68 and 78 degrees. Sway either side of that and we get uncomfortable. We also need to start looking at the bright side of both seasons. In the winter, at least you can dress in layers.
You get too hot, you can take them off. But in the summer, ain't but so much you can take off without getting arrested.
And in the summer, at least the rain doesn't pile up on your sidewalk.
Stay warm.
I guess now those April showers don't seem so bad, do they? Isn't it funny how we always want what we can't have? For example, lots of people, myself included, were praying for the snowbanks to melt. But one little girl had another wish. Thankfully, her grandpa delivered. Let's take a look. All month long, all along the New England coast, folks snowed in to their outies, have been crying uncle to this Antarctica. But a few hundred miles south, outside Baltimore, One young lady has a whole different lament, that almost none of that snow has fallen here.
Do you want to build a snowman?
For nearly half her life, 4-year-old Sophia White has been obsessing over snow ever since she memorized the movie Frozen.
Yeah, why?
She's been dreaming of a blizzard to call her own. And although so far that hasn't been in the clouds for her, her fortunes did start to change a few weeks ago when her mother, Nicole, called up her grandfather in Rhode Island.
I said, I wish I could just teleport her up to you so she could at least just build a snowman. That's all she's been wanting to do is build a snowman.
So the more I thought about it, it's like, you know what, I could do it. Okay.
Sophia's grandfather, Alan Queen, is the parts manager at a Harley-Davidson dealership in Pawtucket. His idea? Not to bring Sophia to the snow, but to bring the snow to Sophia. So far this season, Alan has twice delivered a bed full of snow from Pawtucket, Rhode Island to Glen Burnie, Maryland, more than 750 miles round trip, just to surprise his granddaughter.
First, she didn't get it. She didn't really know what it was, but then when we shoveled some out and she saw it and started playing with it, then it hit her.
Cold has never been so warmly received.
It's snow time.
Yeah!
Which is why Alan plans to make this a tradition.
It's good to make kids happy.
You're basically spoiling her, you know.
That's what grandparents do.
Okay.
It's in the contract.
And that obligation to indulge is a big reason most grandparents do what they do for their little angels.
That makes it worth it right there.
But more importantly, sometimes you have to follow the lead of a little kid to rediscover the joy you've been missing all around you. Has she made you appreciate the snow you have more now? Or maybe not. I take that as a no.
Hey, we got a lot of it up here, so.
So much for my sappy ending. What a great grandpa he is. Thankfully, at least around these parts, we get more than enough snow to satisfy my kids. Okay, after a quick break, come along with us to Monaco, Wisconsin, where the stars are aligned for a spectacular view. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us for our special celebrating Earth Day. You know, I've met some pretty amazing people on the road, but this next man's passion for his craft is out of this world. He reached for the moon and painted on some stars. Take a look.
Here in the North Woods of Wisconsin, a job in a paper mill is about as good as it gets. But for 45-year-old Frank Kovacs, this was his second choice. His first was to be an astrophysicist. As a little kid, he dreamed of exploring outer space. Later, when he couldn't cut the college math, he gave up the degree, but never the dream. And for the past 15 years, has been charting his own course for the stars.
The neighbors thought I lost my mind.
There was a huge sphere covered up by a tarp.
Day and night, he was working on it all the time. Just unbelievable, you know.
Robert Briggs is town chairman of Monaco, Wisconsin, the town where Frank launched his space program. Monaco has a 3-pump gas station, a 2-bit bar, and now, thanks to Frank, one remote planetarium.
This is the most remote planetarium in the world.
Frank basically built it in his backyard.
To be a planetarium director, you need college, but if you build your own, you can run it. Yes.
Frank still works part-time at the paper mill, but this is now his full-time passion. He opened a few years ago, although, so far, business has been far from stellar.
How long since somebody's been here?
It's been about 3 days.
Needless to say, visitors can usually get right in.
Well, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Kovacs Planetarium.
Well, it's just me. You don't have to say all of you.
Okay. So, well, my name is Frank Kovacs, and I designed and built the world's largest rolling mechanical globe planetarium.
Because Frank couldn't afford a fancy projection system to mimic the revolution of our planet, he came up with a way to move the heavens instead. And as for the individual stars,
I took luminous paint and I painted every single star that you would see out in the night sky.
Wait. You painted by yourself every star?
Like a friend told me, he would have just took the paint and threw it up there and hoped they hit the right area.
There are 5,000, each in its proper location and brightness.
I never knew it would look this neat.
It's really a shame more people haven't seen it, but friends and neighbors are confident that will change. Why? They say it's in the stars.
People who send out good receive good. Frank is a good man.
I heard that a lot.
Frank is probably one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet.
Frank is obviously genuine, and if sincerity sold tickets, or optimism was a sight you could see, he'd have the next Disneyland.
It's gonna just take off like a rocket to the stars.
12 years later, Kovacs Planetarium is still open there in Monaco, Wisconsin. Frank gets about 5,000 visitors a year, and he's never stopped improving his show. Right now, he's building an outdoor observatory so folks can check out the real stars on a clear night. Definitely worth a visit if you ever find yourself in that neck of the woods. Up next, we want to bring you back down to earth for an unlikely love story, cut short after 50 years.
The man you're about to meet is about to lose yet another friend. When you're 101, it happens a lot.
I've lost some good friends at my age, and of course I feel bad, but I just thank the good Lord we had him so long.
Fact is, Frank Knight was devastated at the news that his good friend Herbie wouldn't make it. He's known him 50 years, and in that time has grown closer to Herbie than most people ever get to even their closest trees.
That's a big beauty.
Herbie is a 240-year-old elm tree in Yarmouth, Maine. Obviously, Herbie has seen better days. Here, a mere shadow of his former stately self. And yet Herbie is still easily the most beloved elm on the planet.
It's nice to see so many people out enjoying the last few moments of its life.
Hundreds came out to say goodbye.
Herbie is sick. We don't want him to suffer. I mean, it's the best thing for him, so.
What made Herbie sick, and ultimately made him famous, is Dutch elm disease. The fungus swept across America, killing almost every elm in existence. Almost. The fact that Herbie survived all those years, all those seasons, isn't some fluke of nature. Rather, a direct result of 5 decades of tender loving care from a volunteer tree warden named Frank Knight.
They all said you can't save it, and I was so damn stubborn that I said I'm going to try.
So he sprayed and trimmed and coddled that tree so much his wife used to joke.
If that tree's name was Susie, I'd be pretty jealous. But she loved it as much as I did.
All that admiration, all that history, to let it just end with a thud seemed crazy to the folks in Yarmouth, which is why, after Herbie fell last month, they cut up the pieces and distributed them to woodworkers across New England. Those people are now fashioning Herbie into everything from furniture to salad bowls. The pieces will be sold at auction. The profits will go to plant thousands of new trees, which should be tremendous consolation to Frank. I mean, you can only save one tree for so long, but a forest you can save forever.
Frank later passed away at the age of 103. Unbeknownst to him, some wood from Herbie's trunk was actually saved to shape his casket. So in a fitting tribute, they rest together for eternity. Coming up next, in our final minutes, a peek into my decidedly less romantic relationship with Mother Nature. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're nearing the end here. And for our last story, I want to share something a little personal with you. A few years ago, I decided to come clean about a little habit I have. It's one that most people can't stand, but I just can't get enough. Take a look.
I have a confession to make. Even though I only do this at my place in upstate New York, after the kids are in bed. The fact is,
I have a weed addiction.
Here we go.
I just can't stop pulling the things.
Oh, yeah.
Mugwort, Canada thistle, and leafy goldenrod are some of my favorites.
That's the stuff.
I realized the extent of my addiction only recently, after my cameraman interviewed my wife, Andrea, about it.
He goes out at 7 o'clock at night and weeds until dark. I mean, sometimes he's out there past dark.
And her point is?
You know, it's not weeding a garden, it's weeding 5 acres.
4.5, technically. See, a few years ago I had this idea, to turn this weedy hillside into a beautiful prairie full of native wildflowers and grasses. I contacted this man, who would eventually become my dealer.
We started with prairie plants.
Neil DeBall owns the Prairie Nursery in Westfield, Wisconsin. He got me hooked on weeds through gateway plants like purple coneflower, compass plant, and smooth aster.
We're trying to get you hooked. Yes, my product is highly addictive. It's called Love of Nature.
But here's the problem. Before you see those flowers in the magazine, you often need to spend a great deal of time weeding a new prairie meadow. And Neil made no mention of how addicting that can be.
I would come out here every night and dread it, and then a switch flipped, and I started coming out here and loving it.
Weeding can induce a meditative state. And that is therapy for all of us in this crazy world we live in, when you can just tune everything out and focus on one single-minded purpose.
Of course, the downside to a laser focus like that is that sometimes the rest of the world becomes a blur. For example, I'm told the prairie actually looks pretty nice now, but honestly, I can't see the flowers through the weeds. I know there are still a lot of them lurking in here, and that's okay. I mean, what else am I going to do at this point? Just give up on the whole project?
It would...
Andrea?
I could live without it.
You want your husband back, don't
I
you?
know. I don't know if I could live with how defeated my husband would feel if we gave it up.
I thought that was sweet. I'm going to take her to dinner. After the first frost, of course. After I first shared that story, I did much less weeding. And ironically, the prairie started doing better than ever. Go figure. So that's our special for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope after watching you'll take the opportunity to step outside, smell the fresh air, and enjoy all the earth has to offer. After all, it's the only one we've got. For brand new on-the-road stories, don't forget to tune in to the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell every Friday. Until then, I'm Steve Hartman. Stay kind.